This is Between the Brackets, a MediaWiki podcast, episode 57, March 31st, 2020. And actually, just a brief note before we get started. This episode was recorded about a month ago, which feels like a long time ago. I mentioned EMWCon 2020 right in the intro, which was a little bit on shaky ground even at that point. It actually is happening, but it's online only. So actually, if you're listening to this week, feel free to join in on the big conference call. Anyway, I believe Evita remains in good health, and I'm doing fine too, so let's start the podcast. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and my guest for this episode is Evita Hollis, who is a technical project manager at General Electric, as well as serving as the product owner for the GE Wiki. I was excited last year to have on the show someone from SAP, which has about 100,000 employees, but now I have on the show someone from GE, which has about 200,000 employees. So, who cares about SAP? I've met Evita at, I think, 2 different EMWCons. She was planning to go to EMWCon 2020 as well, which I believe is happening right when this episode comes out, but unfortunately she can't make it due to the current coronavirus or Wuhan virus or whatever it's called. Going around. But hopefully this podcast makes up for it. So, Evita, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Where are you located?
I'm located in Houston, Texas.
Oh, great. So, what were you doing before you started working at GE?
I actually was doing pretty much the same role at ConocoPhillips. So, I was there for 5 years at ConocoPhillips.
Yeah, okay. Also in charge of the wiki there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, I knew it was in use at Phillips. What were you doing before Phillips, I guess I should ask also.
So before ConocoPhillips, I was actually I was actually a high school AP calculus teacher, and I taught some fundamental mathematics courses at a Lone Star College, which is a Houston community college. So I was just a teacher, a math teacher.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool. So you also lived for a while in Europe, no? I seem to recall that from having talked to you before.
I didn't live there myself. My husband actually was a professional basketball player in Europe. So he lived there for about 7 years. So I traveled a lot to Europe to.
Oh, okay.
But I stay with him, yeah.
Yeah.
We just go months at a time and come back.
Sorry, you.
I would just go travel months at a time. I would go and
months
stay like
at a time. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's tough, but I'm glad I'm glad you're in the same place now.
Yeah.
So when did you join GE?
I joined GE in 2017. So at the 2017 or 2016, I can't remember, one of those in November of 2016 maybe, yeah. So I started there. So from there, yeah, I started in 2016, I believe so.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, before we get to wiki stuff, I'm guessing most people have heard of GE, but for people listening to this who don't know about it, could you briefly explain what GE does?
I can explain. GE does a lot of things. It's a multi thing company. I can explain. I'll explain more about my group within GE. So I'm in the Global Research Center, and so there's research and development. That's the part of the GE that does research and development. They do a lot of government contracts, things like that. There's also the research and development works with the aviation, the ones who built the engines and things like that.
Yeah. So by the time you joined GE, you were already, heavily into MediaWiki. Did you bring MediaWiki to GE, or was it already there? And I guess maybe that's part of why they hired you.
Yeah. So they were actually starting up. Excuse me. They were actually already starting up their knowledge sharing program. And part of knowledge sharing is the wiki. So they had the MediaWiki. I believe they had it for about a year before I came in. So it was not used much. Didn't have a lot of structure around it. So I pretty much came in with just a wiki that didn't have much in it.
Yeah. And what was the wiki like at ConocoPhillips? Did it use Semantic MediaWiki and all that kind of stuff?
So I'll tell you this. So, I said I used to be a teacher. So when I came to ConocoPhillips, I actually didn't even know what a wiki was.
Right.
So they actually hired me because of my background in training. And they wanted to have someone to actually get users to start contributing. So my goal was to learn the wiki, learn how to use it, and train people on how to use it. So they had just basic MediaWiki. Semantic MediaWiki was installed, but not really used. They had maybe one or two power users who may have done a couple properties here, a couple queries there, but it wasn't really heavily used at all until maybe my last year at ConocoPhillips. That's when I started, at first I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't know what the purpose of Semantic MediaWiki was.
Right.
So I had to learn more about that. And once I learned more and the power behind it, I started doing more things in it. So maybe about the last year that I was at ConocoPhillips, more and more Semantic MediaWiki was being used by me, and by the users were using the benefits of it. They didn't know that it was semantic. They didn't know how to set it up, but they were able to run queries and things like that.
Yeah. Cool. So when you got to GE and you saw the state of the wiki was, did you think, okay, well, we can do a better job with this. We can add structure and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, definitely. Yes. I learned a lot from ConocoPhillips. I learned what not to do, what to do. So it was good to have this fresh new wiki and kind of bring in some of those best practices that I learned from ConocoPhillips over to GE.
Yeah.
So it was great to kind of build it up from scratch.
Yeah. So I want to ask a few basic questions about the wiki. You gave a talk at the EMWCon last year in San Francisco where you covered some of this stuff. So I think I know the answers to some of these, but it's good to ask anyway. And there'll be a link to that talk from the episode page. So first of all, is it one wiki or more than one?
I would say it's more than one, technically. It's one that I support. I only support the GE Wiki, which is the main one. There are other groups within GE, like GE Healthcare, that have their own wiki. They use MediaWiki, so it's a separate wiki, but we don't support that. And we don't advertise that or, share that. And they don't as well. They have their small user group already defined. So they're not looking for more people. There, here and there, we also find other small groups that have wikis that aren't aware of our wiki. And so sometimes we take that and we migrate it over to ours. So our goal is to have just that one enterprise wiki, but there are little pop-ups around that we find every now and then.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's not totally surprising in a company of 200,000 people that there's going to be just some people setting up their own software. Do you ever give advice to those smaller wikis, or do they ever ask you, how do you do this and this?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I more so try to encourage them to move over to our wiki, and
right.
I would say maybe once or twice they decided no, we're gonna just have our own. And one of those, we actually help them get off of a user's personal virtual computer and move it to a server. So we kind of help them, and then they're on their own. We help them we'll help them and then to get to a state, and then they're on their own. We don't provide technical support or anything for them.
Right. So what's the scope of the main wiki, the GE Wiki, in terms of number of users, number of pages, that kind of thing?
I think right now, so we're total pages, and I wouldn't say content pages. Total pages probably about 50,000.
Wow.
When we look at the content pages, it's about 9,000. And when we say content, we're not considering like stubs. It's the rich content that we're measuring from that.
Right. Okay.
Users, I think we're at around 17,000 users, unique users. And that's the last that I checked, I think at the end of last year. I should have looked at those numbers again. But that was around last year, those numbers. at the end of
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Close enough. Yeah. So what's your role as far as the wiki? In an official sense, are you the main administrator of it?
So yes, I'm the main administrator, and basically I break it down as the product owner. I'm the person who works with all of our stakeholders. So with GE, because we're in the research center, so global research, we're part of that group, which is GE Research. But we work with GE Aviation, GE Renewable, GE Healthcare, and those groups kind of fund us. They fund. They're pretty much paying for our services and our platform. So I work with those business leads directly to try to see what features and things that they want within the wiki. And I kind of set the governance, guidelines for type of content, where our wiki is not a free for all type of content. We don't allow meeting notes and project plannings. We have a governance of what type of content goes in that. So I'm often, like I mentioned in my presentation last year, I'm often also called the Wiki Police, because I have a team, and we monitor every new page that goes into the wiki, and we tag it right away. We're pretty much, I wouldn't say we are as responsive as Wikipedia is, but we are very responsive. We look at those really quick, and we make sure that every article is categorized. Because we have a monitoring guideline where you have to have, if you create an article, it has to belong to an organization that's responsible for the content. So that's my role as a product owner. As the technical project manager, I'm kind of looking at each project, and I'm managing and I'm planning the stage. When are we going to upgrade? When are we going to install new extensions? What are the steps to implement a new project for the wiki? If we do lessons learned, or if we do different things that the users requested, I kind of plan those out and manage that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're in charge of both the content and the software behind the scenes.
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess that was an easier, quicker way of saying that.
Well, yeah. No, okay. This is something I hadn't heard of before on a corporate wiki. I believe you also have a group of official moderators for different types of content.
Mm-hmm.
How many are there?
I would say we have probably about 200 moderators.
Wow.
Yeah. So the way we break it down, our structure in the wiki is, here's the business group, our high-level business group, which is, say, for aviation or aviation renewable. Under aviation renewable, they may have smaller organizations. So each organization gets their own portal. And every portal has to have at least one moderator. And most of our portals have, at the minimum, 2. Most of them have 2. Some have 8. And so those moderators are the people who they're watching every category, and as a new article is added, so not only are we watching it to make sure that it's suitable for the wiki as far as the type of content, they are watching it to make sure that it's suitable for the type of content that should be shared on a global scale. So they're looking at that, and they're reviewing it. Some of our portals are closed, meaning they control access, so they have their own namespace. So
Right.
The moderators are looking to make sure that it's closed. It can be confidential, but within GE, we can have confidential, we can have highly confidential. Our wiki is not suitable for highly confidential, meaning we don't have enough security around the highly confidential content. So that should not be in our wiki.
Yeah.
So that's what the moderators are looking for, to make sure that that content fits the criteria for our wiki.
Right. Okay. There's nothing too confidential being put on the wiki. Yeah. Do the moderators do they come from the different groups, or are they all part of your department?
Oh no, they're from their group. They have to, in order to have a portal, in order to have content, they have to assign moderators from their organization.
Yeah. That's really neat. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but somehow most companies don't have that kind of thing. Is that part of their official job title to be a moderator, or is it just sort of like, something else that they have to do?
No, it's not their official job. It is just something else that they have to do. And sometimes we get complaints about that, that they don't have time to be this moderator. But we break it down to say, okay, it's not like it takes a lot of time. You're not you don't have to be the subject matter expert for every article. You're just the person that maybe delegate that to someone. So if you see an article and maybe the person who's creating that article is a subject matter expert, is the person who should be owning that content. And that's what you are there for, to make sure that the right person is contributing, and the right person is looking at it. So. Yeah.
And do they end up getting a, MediaWiki knowledge in terms of, using forms and fixing errors and that kind of thing? Or is it really just about monitoring, looking for bad content?
Yeah, it's only the content. I would say I can actually maybe 5 people in our wiki use semantic, like creating forms and creating things like that. A person may come and create an article using a form, but they don't create that form. They don't know about it. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's what another general question: what kinds of information are stored on the wiki?
Mostly it's training. So on-demand type of training. GE does have its own learning center where it's real formal, structured, audit type of learning, but the wiki is more for on-demand. So the groups maybe publish a set of training documents. They put that there. Other things is like some standards around GE standards for aviation or renewables. It's a lot of glossaries, a lot of like abbreviations. If you guess, this company has a lot of acronyms. So a lot of that type of thing. But also we have in my previous talk, I talked about how we use SharePoint for our communities. And the SharePoint is what they use for real-time collaboration. So one of the things that they do for that is they say, here's a discussion. It's very robust. It has a lot of helpful information. And they have a button in SharePoint that says promote to the wiki. So a lot of times that information is sent to the wiki and now it's an article. So if somebody comes back and asks a similar question, instead of the group kind of responding to the question again, they actually refer to that article and say, hey, here's something that's been asked and answered already. So a lot of content is from that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So if I understand the relationship between SharePoint and MediaWiki, and by the way, for people who don't know, SharePoint is a Microsoft product. Well, I shouldn't really explain it because I don't fully understand it. But basically, it's like a big document management system that's very popular, and it's considered one of the enterprise MediaWiki people consider it one of the big competitors. SharePoint people, I don't know if they even are aware of this competition, but so basically the idea is if you have a document, whether it's a Word document or that kind of thing, you put it in SharePoint, but then the better solution is for them to wikify that and put that information into the wiki. Is that the basic idea, or are there really different kinds of information that go into the two different systems?
So I would say it's always like a debate on which one it should go in. But when I advise people, I'd say if it's a Word document or if it's like a PowerPoint, you should always convert that to a wiki article. It's easier for people to find it in our wiki. SharePoint is able to crawl the wiki, so you can find everything in the wiki. But if it's a 100-page guideline or standards, we wouldn't convert that. We would just put that in SharePoint and link to it from a wiki article or something like that. So it's really those quick nuggets of information. It should go into the wiki. But if it's something very robust in detail and have some kind of access requirement for it, it should go in SharePoint. SharePoint is much better at handling access down to the granular level of individual people, where the wiki can't.
Right.
So documents like that, you put in the SharePoint and you can link to them from the wiki. But that's how I kind of describe the difference
Yeah. Okay.
when to use wiki versus when to use SharePoint.
Yeah, but okay. So it's not that there's some one department that puts their information in SharePoint or that kind of thing. Actually, I should ask. Well, SharePoint has its own wiki capability. I guess you're not using that.
Yeah, we're not using it at all.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. The whole idea that you're trying to get people to move stuff from Word documents, PowerPoint, all that into the wiki. Have you noticed a change in people's habits? Are people instinctively creating Word documents less than they were before, or is it just a hard habit to break for people?
It's definitely a hard habit to break for people. One of the things that we're doing to encourage this, because one of the biggest complaint is that they just don't want to learn how to use a different tool. Yeah, visual editor is there; it helps them with the editing and creating, but it's still not as great as using a Word document. Okay, it's not as easy as using a Word, especially because you can insert a picture and things like that. Where the wiki, you have to upload it and have all these different things. So that's a barrier. New people, that's a barrier. So one of the things we're trying to do to encourage it is remove that barrier. So we say, okay, well, you have this Word document. Why don't you send it to our Wiki as a Service team? We will convert it for you and move it into the wiki. So we have seen uptake in that, where I believe last year we may have had about, I think a little bit over 100 requests, and that 100 requests resulted into several hundred articles, because one request may consist of 5 or 100. Actually, we've had a request that had just the site. Here, take this whole site. They got rid of a whole site of Word documents, and we wanted them to convert into the wiki. So taking away that barrier of them having to learn the technology, because my focus is not getting everybody to create or to actually create using the wiki. My focus is to get people to start using what's in the wiki. And we need content in the wiki for people to use what's in the wiki.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you have a group of people who will do that? They're called the Wiki as a Service team?
Yeah.
So is it, are people, is anyone doing that as a full-time job?
Yes. So I have a team right now. It's a team of 3. And so it's their job, but that's part of their job that support the wiki. So my team directly, it's me, and then I have 2 people directly under me, and then I have another employee. We all work on the wiki as part of our job.
Right.
So we consist as the wiki as a team service. It's mostly the people who work with me who does them. If we have like a big request like we did last year where it was 100+ documents, then we have people on our knowledge sharing team who we kind of pull in to kind of help meet the demand to get those done quickly.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, that's great. So I'm guessing all those people do things besides just converting Word documents into wiki text.
Yeah, so they do other things, but they do other things in the wiki.
Right.
2 of them, their full-time job is just the wiki as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Let's see here. So what kinds of extensions are you using? You mentioned page forms and semantic MediaWiki. In your talk, you also talked about approved revs. Are those? And you also mentioned visual editor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I would say semantic. The page forms is our biggest one lately. We're using a lot of that. Approved revs we're using as well with the page forms. Other ones, I guess the small ones we use visual editor. We're using some of the I wish I had a list of them right here in my face.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always a lot.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot. Let me think.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm sure you use parts or functions or whatever, but I don't think anybody really cares.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we use a lot of the little ones like partial function. We use like the title display thing where we can change the title.
Right.
What else? Semantic. We use the for the page forms. Actually, we use the semantic, but not the page form. The query. We use semantic results format.
Sure.
I use a lot of those. I don't know. I'm blanking out right now, but there's a lot of little ones that we do use as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. What about custom development? Do you have? Has anybody there created any local extensions or that kind of thing?
So I have a contractor, a developer. Mark. He's our full-time developer.
Yeah, Mark Hirschberger.
Mark Hirschberger, yes.
Right.
So
yeah. He hasn't been on the podcast yet, but I hope to have him on. Fortunately, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
He's been with me at GE since I've been at GE. I think he was actually at GE before I was at GE.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and we worked together at ConocoPhillips as well. So,
crazy. That's quite a coincidence. You both joined GE in a sense.
Yeah, and I think he actually knew that they were looking for somebody, and he mentioned me, and I was like, so I reached out and applied for the job. So yeah, it was his connection got me at GE.
Right.
But
okay.
So yeah, he's our developer, and he works with creating new things. Like his main focus is like the one that he did for our restricted namespaces. I'm not sure if he totally customized that or whatever. I'm not sure exactly if he used something else or whatever, but I know at ConocoPhillips we weren't able to restrict our namespace, so he kind of helped us with that and using our integrating it with GE's Active Directory to maintain that list. So you're able to add and remove people automatically as people are moved throughout the org chart. So he's done that. He's done some of the when I say some of the other custom development, he's more like customizing or doing some of the current extensions, but adding features to it. For instance, I believe he worked on your approved. You do the approved reps, right?
Yeah.
And it was things that we needed for it, and so he kind of worked on adding more problems.
Yeah, that was a year or two ago. Yeah, maybe last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So he does that. So I wouldn't say he goes out and just totally creates a whole lot of new ones. He pretty much helps us expand the ones that we have to fit our needs.
Right. So speaking of approved revs, I wanted to ask about workflow. I know you have some pages where there's a status field, something like that, and the status changes as different people review the page or review the thing that the page represents, or that kind of thing. It's something I think I'd say there's really no ideal solution for it in the code yet in terms of the current MediaWiki extensions. Have you tried to automate that in any way? Using whatever existing software that is, and maybe in conjunction with approved revs.
Automating.
The process of a status changing. If one person, if somebody changes the status from draft to in progress or whatever it is, then a certain group of people get emailed about it, and maybe other people get activated, so now they can change the status to the next step or that kind of thing.
So yeah, I kind of have that in what we're using for our lessons learned approach. So our lessons learned approach has like 3 levels, 3 different phases and 3 different user groups. So it's the user group who submits it, then it's the user groups who review it, approve it, then it's the user group that takes that and implements it. And then they have to come in and say, okay, this has been implemented, it's institutionalized, and here's where you can find more information. So with page forms, I'm able to, hide certain sections until something is completed. And the way that people are alerted is based on selections. So for some groups say, okay, now if it's in draft, no one's alerted because it's a draft. They save it as a draft. Once they come back and they submit it, then this group of reviewers are alerted. I tried to implement that with using properties, the semantic watch. The semantic
semantic watch list, right?
Yes, yeah. But we couldn't get that to work well, so we got rid of that, and we're just using category. So basically, when they select submit, it adds a certain category, and everybody on that watch list for that category gets alerted that a new page is added, so they actually go out and review the page. So I use categories a lot to kind of implement. It's kind of like a messy workaround. I'm just trying to make it work. But the categories I'm using, approved revs, the properties don't change, which I like now because I've implemented it a certain way. Because it's not once they update things, if it's not approved, those properties don't change.
Yeah,
in the background.
Right. Yeah, that can be a tricky thing. Yeah.
And I needed that to change in order to do alerts, but now I've worked around that, so I'm hoping you don't change that.
All right. If you're hoping for nothing to happen, that's
it works now that nothing happens. But it works well now. I'm just using a bunch of different things: the category, the watch list, and then the page itself. What's been approved, that updates, so that helps send another alert to people using the categories. So I guess the biggest issue I have with the approved revs and this whole workflow is keeping everything refreshed. A lot of pages are, because of the workflow, it's a lot of things that are connected. If one thing changes, it doesn't necessarily drill down to update everything else.
Right.
So that's something that Mark is working on to kind of say, okay, this page refreshes and it should refresh all of the connecting pages.
Yeah. I guess I guess I should note there's if semantic watch list didn't work out, there's another extension called Edit Notify that I played a part in, which is supposed to be like semantic watch list, but it maybe it works better. I don't know, but whether or not you use it, I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone listening. It gets triggered when you can have it trigger when certain parts of a page get changed in certain categories and that kind of thing. So, but anyway, if everything's sounds like you've got it under control, or it's in process, so that's good.
There's always room for improvement, so I'll definitely check the Edit Notify.
Yeah, Edit Notify. All right, cool. Let's see. You have a nice looking skin too for the wiki. Is that a custom thing?
I don't think it's a different skin. I think we're using the same skin. We had a intern who was a user interface designer. So she actually just used a bunch of CSS and JavaScript to kind of clean it up and make it look fancy. But the skin is the same, and it's the default skin. What is it?
Vector?
I can't remember. Yeah, it's the default skin. Yeah. Vector.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, wow. She really changed it up. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's nice. It's colorful, which is something that a lot of MediaWiki skins could benefit from. I guess maybe that's it for the GE Wiki questions, sort of. I want to ask about something else. You're a member of a group called the MediaWiki Stakeholders Group, or MW Stake for short. I believe you're their treasurer, actually.
Yep.
And it's interesting, speaking of Mark Hirschberger, he's I believe the guy who runs that group. So yeah, it's a group that's come up a few times on this podcast, but we haven't really talked about it yet. So not to put you on the spot, but can you explain what the MediaWiki Stakeholders Group is?
So let me explain my involvement in it first, before I try to speak on their behalf, because I don't think I'm the best person to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Simply because I'm really trying to figure the whole thing out as well. I'm new to it.
Right. Okay. Okay.
I was was brought into, Mark asked me to participate. I've participated in some of the calls and the meetings. I know that one of the goals is to just kind of get both users and developers together and figure out ways to have MediaWiki a better platform, you know?
Yeah.
With me, I spoke with Mark before. It's like, because I feel like a lot of the people in it are developers, and it's really development focused. So a lot of times I actually zone out. So just to be honest, I zone out of it because it's really high level technical of it. So I'm not the person to speak on it.
Right. Yeah, I figured, because it's sort of a combination of it's a combination of a few different things. There's definitely a development component. I think there's like an advocacy component to it, and like an organization. So yeah, probably Mark is the really the person to ask about that. But I one thing I do find interesting that you may have some insight on is I think one of the things it does, or is planned to do, the thing I find most interesting is that it has a bank account, so it can potentially be used to gather funds and then pay money out to developers or whoever else, which is something that's popular in the open source software world, definitely for bigger projects like Linux and that kind of thing. But it's interesting talking to you about that, not just because you're the treasurer, but because you work for GE, which is maybe the biggest company that uses MediaWiki, as far as I know, in terms of number of employees, if nothing else, and probably in terms of the setup of the wiki. But so potentially you could be involved in not just receiving money for the MediaWiki Stakeholders Group, but also sending money there. Have you talked to anyone at GE about potentially funding enterprise MediaWiki development? Not just paying for specific consulting or features you need, but generally being a sponsor for the whole project?
So just to back up a little bit, so if the Stakeholders Group has applied for nonprofit status. That has not been yet given. So they're still in the process of that. So we do have an account that's kind of like on hold until that status is approved.
Right, that makes sense.
And so within it, one of the meetings that we've had is about how we're going to accept that, and is it going to be based on membership and membership dues and sponsor. And so I have actually spoke to some of my coworkers at GE about the involvement. Like, would we want to be a group that sponsors some of this development that could be done? But I think because the group is fairly new, we need to kind of outline how we want to approach that. Is it going to be any company can say, hey, I'm going to pay this amount of money to get this to get some kind of development done for this? Because one of the questions that one of my coworkers asked is, why would I fund the support or sponsor the stakeholders group to do development when we have our in-house developer that we're paying?
Yeah.
So
but
we have
by
to
in-house
kind of
developer, do you mean Mark?
Correct. Exactly. Mark.
That's interesting. So in both, that's an interesting question, because in both cases, I guess you'd be sending money to Mark.
Exactly. So it's like, what is it, a conflict of interest for us? Are we saying that
that's true,
he's gonna, we're gonna pay for him to work on something that he's gonna be working on for other companies? So we have to. So that was the question. We have not been able to fully answer that question yet, because the group hasn't really defined membership and how they want sponsors to contribute. And if they do contribute, what does that really go to? So we're still in the big stages of defining that. And so once that's defined, we can kind of speak more onto what GE could possibly do.
Yeah.
Or we want to do, because we're not sure.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question, and that question that your coworker asked, and that's something a lot of companies, I think, that's their first instinct, is to ask something like that when you talk about sponsoring open software. It's like, we're already paying for development or consulting. Why should we just send a blank check or whatever you want to call it to this group with no tangible results from it. Although in most cases it's not. It would be a different group of people that you're sending money to in one case or the other. As opposed to the same person. But
I clarify. Well, send it, with the stakeholders. It's not like it's going to Mark.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just struck by the unusual situation. Yeah, I'm over simplifying. I'm sure. Yeah, and the money would go to presumably to some other developers or wherever else it went. But do you have any thoughts about that kind of thing in general? I mean, it seems to me like most companies, definitely most non-tech companies, just aren't in a mindset to sponsor open source software, even if they make a ton of use of it. It just doesn't make sense to them.
I would just say that, for example, with ConocoPhillips and with GE, they did put a lot of resources behind MediaWiki, just because if you look at all of the we've actually saved the company money because of all of the other wiki-like platforms that they use and they paid a lot of money for. And they was able to shut down a bunch of sites and get rid of a lot of old platforms and move that content to our wiki.
Yeah.
So there is a cost value there of using MediaWiki and funding it, because it does serve a lot of purposes where all of these smaller platforms can kind of be decommissioned. And looking on for sponsoring the stakeholders group, I would say in response to my coworker, or somewhat in response to him, is that our group is knowledge sharing. We talk about how multiple minds is better than one. And so, yes, we have one Mark in-house developer, but the stakeholder group will give us multiple developers insight, and things can get done quicker and maybe better. So that's what I kind of approach it as, how to leverage the stakeholders group in getting things done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense as a rationale. Just out of curiosity, what are not to like cause drama, but what are some of the applications that MediaWiki has replaced? Do you remember any names of some of the software?
Some of them, I know some people were using a SharePoint wiki, so they replaced that. Some of the other platforms or in-house platforms that GE has a GE Digital group, and they've actually customized and created platforms that now use as well. So I won't name specifically what those platforms are, but we do have in-house platforms that we kind of
So that's interesting. With SharePoint, have costs for SharePoint gone down now that you're making less use of it, and for you need to pay for fewer seats or less development work or that kind of thing?
I don't necessarily think we're saving on the SharePoint cost, just because I think there's and I don't know exactly, but for SharePoint, we use it so heavily in GE, I think that cost is a standard cost. I think the move from SharePoint Wiki is just a user preference, just because the MediaWiki can provide so much more support, and also Confluence. Now, Confluence is one of the ones that we do migrate a lot of people from, and that cost is a cost saving from migrating from that one.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Yeah. I call it Confluence. I don't actually know how you're supposed to say it, but yeah. They're another one of the competitors that people usually list for MediaWiki. How has that transition been for people? Do some people miss the some of the features that Confluence provides, or have people been all right with switching over?
From from the people that I've worked with directly, it's been a plus for them to move away from it, just because the MediaWiki, the features that we have are not available in Confluence. So
yeah,
it's been a plus for them. Even just like you said, the look, they love the way it looks, and the way that you can find things. Where Confluence is just like this index of content on the side, and they talk about like the history and being able to, it's very transparent and things like that. So some of the features are really a plus for them moving from Confluence. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, of course the structured data is the big thing. That's the advantage. That's great to hear. I think that's all of my questions. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything we missed?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. That's great. We talked about a lot of stuff. Yeah. You have a fascinating setup there at GE. It sounds very well structured, well supported, well liked. So that's all great to hear. Yeah.
So have you interviewed other people who kind of have a setup like I do at GE, or is this unique?
That's interesting. I'm trying to think now. There have been quite a few corporate users. I mentioned SAP, and then there's people from organizations too who have been on this podcast. NASA, ICANN. I'm trying to think who else. I apologize to other people that I'm blanking on Ingredion. I think generally maybe not everyone, but maybe everyone has complained that it's not part of their job duties. It's just sort of a small. It started as a small project, got huge, but they still are not getting any official support or payment for. So I'm not entirely sure, but it could be that the GE, at least on this podcast, is unique. that the management is actually supporting it, and there's a paid team maintaining it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a complaint of a lot of people, and I think people could, a lot of other companies could benefit from that kind of thing. Yeah, and as you noted, it saves money. I mean, in the long run, if you can get away from a more expensive software. Yeah.
And I would say that for even at ConocoPhillips and for GE, it wasn't like the management is supporting, hey, use this platform. This is what we're going to pay for people to use. They actually are supporting at a more higher level of the knowledge management program.
I see.
So within knowledge management, we decided that this is what we're going to use. So I think maybe if some of those people who don't have that support, if they put it at a higher level of this is a knowledge management goal and this is what we're going to use to meet those goals, maybe they can get it more support. But it's really at the higher knowledge management level that support is being given.
Yeah. I don't think any of these companies or organizations have a knowledge management team. That really could be it. Yeah. They could definitely benefit from that. Cool. Great. That was a good discussion. It was great to talk to you. I hope we can meet in person before too long again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Evita, for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, Evita Hollis of GE. I hope everyone out there is safe and in good health. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.